Our aspirations in the fund has been, we want to secure that, Danish startups get Danish capital, get a Danish workforce and get like a Danish headquarter that is based here. I think that trend is becoming stronger because, funds like us and other funds are doing that now. So that's one trend, that we keep the companies longer here before they go global.
Tommy Andersen, co-founder of byFounders. Thank you very much for joining. Let's start off by talking about byFounders. Can you give me just your best 1-minute intro of your fantastic venture fund?
Of course I can. So byFounders is a for founders byFounders venture fund. We invest in tech companies in the Nordics and Baltics with global ambitions. And the aspiration of the fund is that we're a founder-driven fund. We're about 50 founders, accomplished founders, have come together, invested in the fund with the aspiration of creating a fund that is founder-friendly and brings a level of evenness between investors and founders. So we lean towards having more than just a financial proposition. We also have an aspiration of being very friendly, in a sense of opening our networks, giving operational help, and in general being very helpful to the founders. So for that, we've gathered a group of 50 founders. They all invested in the fund, and they help the fund with deal flow, with due diligence, and all kinds of stuff in the lifetime of the fund.
I've seen in the press that you've once said that the money that you have in the fund, that's the gasoline of the car, but it doesn't make the car drive. Can you try to elaborate a bit on that? How is it that you want to work with the companies?
Yeah. So byFounders is an early stage fund. So we invest at pre-seed and seed stage, meaning that these are companies that have just been formed, many of them at the pre-seed stage, and they may not even have a product market fit. They don't really know what the market is, they don't really know what the customer or user base is. So in that respect, they're not well-established companies yet. So more than just a check, and we have 100 million euros under our belt, more than just a check, we would like to provide them with a lot of assistance around the check, meaning the gasoline on the engine. So we're trying to have the aspiration to come in with a lot more than just a check, more than just being a financial fund, but give really, good support and good assistance to these people. One of the things that is most difficult for a startup is getting access to clients, access to partners, access to other VCs. And again, the 50 people around the fund, they have that network, they have that, access to key players in the ecosystem. And that's one of the things that we can provide to the startups in our portfolio.
You've just been through a fundraising process. As you said, you raised 100 million euros. Can you put some words on the fundraising? How is it to raise money in Denmark? We often hear that it's difficult and it takes a long time. Can you try to put some words on your experience on the fundraising?
Yeah. So I think it all depends on the size of the fund and kind of like the target and the stage of the fund. So we're an early stage fund and we have a fund size of 100 million euro. And that gives you kind of like an LP base to work with. And it also excludes a lot of LPs. So the pension funds in Denmark, they typically do not invest, ticket sizes below 50 million euros. And with a 100 million euro fund, we're just too small for their ticket size. So we've come together with a group of LPs, one being the Danish Growth Fund. We have some family offices and we have foreign fund of funds entities. So if you look at the Danish, funding, environment, I think, for an early stage fund, which is not that big, there's not that much to choose from. So some of the public money, the growth fund, and those instruments are valuable, and EIF. Family offices have become a very prominent part of the funding for our kind of fund as well. We have 6-7 family funds in the fund. And then we have high net worth individuals who have gathered some kind of a fortune, if you may, and they want to invest early stage in other companies. They're all entrepreneurs themselves typically, and they want to pay it forward to the next generation. So we have a balanced LP base, some public institutional money, family offices, foreign LPs, and a feeder fund with high net worth individuals. That's kind of our LP base.
Let's talk a bit about the Danish startup scene. for me, it seems as if it's red hot right now. Can you try to put some words on the Danish startup scene? How do you see the Danish startup scene right now?
So I think if you look at it in a broader perspective from the Nordic scene, you can see that the Nordic is kind of like the unicorn factory of the world. We create more unicorns than any other region in the world, even considering Silicon Valley and Israel and other places. So we have a very well-educated workforce. We have a greatly developed, ecosystem of startups now. And you take the Danish, subset of that, I think there's no doubt that, Sweden and Stockholm leads the pace in the Nordics, but Copenhagen, in my view, is kind of the number 2 ecosystem in the Nordics. So what has happened is that, we have an accomplished group of serial entrepreneurs that have, done the journey. So you look at Zendesk, you look at Tradeshift, you look at Just Eat, Unity, some of those companies that have accomplished founders that have taken their journey with the company, created unicorns. They're now coming back and they're reinvesting in the ecosystem. So you have like a seasoned group of well-versed entrepreneurs helping the next generation. So I think the ecosystem is maturing, and you have a breadth of startups, one being health tech, ed tech, fintech is very strong in Copenhagen as well, and even the impact-driven investments now are coming strong. So I think we're like a second wave, I would say, of startups in Denmark now, and we're riding that wave with the fund now, investing in that second level group of startups.
And compared to the other countries in the Nordics, you said yourself that we were a bit, that we were a bit behind. Especially Sweden. How would you compare the Danish startup scene to? Is there anything we can do better in Denmark?
That we can do better? I think one of the things that has lacked in the Danish ecosystem is capital. There's been very few funds, and some of the funds have not been really targeted. The very early stage of the ecosystem. And if you don't have that initial spark to turn startups on, you don't get the growth later on. So I think a fund like ours and other funds that are popping up, creates that catalyst or spark to the ecosystem that will, enable a larger group of startups to actually grow. So I think that the capital side is being taken care of now. The other part is, lack of a good workforce. We're like 6 million, people in Denmark. That is not enough to fuel the startups. So we need, better access to foreign labor, which has been a problem, and it still is a problem. I think so. One of the things that needs to be remedied is that access to a skilled workforce.
Now it's getting political, so let's move to another item, being the trends in the market right now. I saw personally a trend a few years ago. I think that then we had the apps. You had an app solution. Then you had this shared economy. Then it moved on to being solving a problem in the everyday. But it seems to me that there is a trend now that some of the startups they go big. They want to solve a global problem that really helps the world. Could you try to put some words on the trends that you see in the market right now?
So I think the UN global goals in itself, they're so big. So the climate change within health and a lot of other respects, the problems are so big that the best entrepreneurs are moving in that direction. So what we would call impact-driven investments is really on the rise. And I think we have a current portfolio of 15 companies in the fund, and I'll say 2/3 of those are actually with impact-driven investments. So in that sense, you see that those problems are being solved now. The major problems are actually become very, very, interesting investment opportunities for us, because the problem is so big, and the best entrepreneurs are moving that direction, and we follow the good talent. So we follow the good entrepreneurs when we invest. So that's one of the trends. We also see a strong trend in Denmark, in health tech. We have a very, very strong life science cluster, in Denmark and southern Sweden. And, the data side of that, data services, and AI around is a very, very strong proposition. Green solutions, solutions within agriculture, within food as well. It's also a very interesting opportunity. And then, of course, fintech. There's a lot of financial institutions here and in the Nordics. So fintech is a super strong, vertical in Copenhagen as well.
Now I'm curious to hear, for you as a venture capitalist, try to look in the crystal ball. How do you see the Danish startup scene in like 5 or 10 years? Are you optimistic, or how do you see the Danish startup scene going forward?
One of things that was the aspiration of the fund was to keep Danish startups longer here. So they actually get a foothold, locally before they, acquire, foreign venture capital. One of the problems we've seen earlier on is that, they couldn't raise capital here, so they moved out of the country way too early. I think one of our aspirations in the fund has been, we want to secure that, Danish startups get Danish capital, get a Danish workforce and get like a Danish headquarter that is based here. I think that trend is becoming stronger because, funds like us and other funds are doing that now. So that's one trend, that we keep the companies longer here before they go global. I think the other, mega trend is one we talked before, is that impact-driven investments are going to be really, really strong. We see a lot of money moving in that direction. We see a lot of family offices saying we only want to invest in like clean and in impact-driven investments. We have that pressure on ourselves. And I think lastly, you're going to see that the Nordic ecosystem is going to become one. Stockholm, Helsinki, Copenhagen, and Oslo, we're becoming one investment entity. So a lot of startups are like blending blood with each other, in the Nordic system. So instead of being individual countries, we see that foreign VCs come to invest in the Nordics, not just in one city or in one country. That's another trend.